Flight 447 trembles at 35,000 feet. Emergency alarms shriek through the cabin as Captain Hayes slumps unconscious over controls slick with sweat. First Officer Carter grips his stomach, fighting waves of nausea that blur his vision. Is there a pilot on board? Jessica Walsh's voice cracks over the intercom, her professional composure shattered. Through the chaos rises a voice, calm, measured, unbreakable. This is Maya Johnson. I need cockpit access now. But 3 hours ago, Jessica laughed at this same woman, questioned her boarding pass, suggested she belonged in economy, not business class, seat 2A. Blake Morrison filmed her, posting online about passengers who don't know their place. Mrs. Goldstein watched quietly as they humiliated the elegant black woman who sat with military posture, checking an old aviator's watch. What none of them knew about Maya Johnson was about to save all their lives. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport bustles with the controlled chaos of America's busiest hub. Gate B-12 serves as the departure point for United Flight 447, a Boeing 777-300ER bound for Los Angeles, with 287 souls aboard. The aircraft gleams under fluorescent lights, its twin engines promising a smooth journey across the continental United States. Maya Johnson approaches the gate with the measured stride of someone accustomed to command. At 45, she carries herself with an understated dignity that speaks of discipline earned rather than inherited. Her navy blazer fits perfectly over a crisp white blouse, and her minimal jewelry consists of small pearl earrings and one notable exception: a vintage aviator's watch with a worn leather strap that she unconsciously adjusts when deep in thought. The gate agent's smile falters slightly as Maya presents her boarding pass. "Business class, seat 2A, Maya says simply, her voice carrying the steady cadence of someone comfortable with authority. The agent's eyes flick between the boarding pass and Maya's face, a pause lasting just long enough to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of watching passengers. "Of course, ma'am. Welcome aboard." The response comes with practiced politeness, but the hesitation has already been noted by Blake Morrison, a 41-year-old software executive whose expensive suit and aggressive posture mark him as someone unaccustomed to being questioned. Jessica Walsh, the senior flight attendant, represents 8 years of commercial aviation experience wrapped in blonde perfection and unwavering professionalism. At 32, she's worked her way up from domestic routes to international flights, and her smile has been refined to reveal nothing while suggesting everything. She greets each business-class passenger with the same measured warmth, though her eyes linger a fraction longer on Maya than others. The cabin of Flight 447 reflects the stratified nature of modern air travel. Business class occupies the forward section with its wide leather seats and extra legroom, separated from economy by both physical barriers and invisible social ones. Maya settles into 2A, pulling out a thick folder of technical documents that she reviews with the focused attention of someone who understands every detail. Mrs. Patricia Goldstein, 67, observes the boarding process from seat 1A with the keen awareness of someone who has witnessed decades of social change. Her late husband's career in aerospace engineering taught her to recognize competence regardless of its packaging, and something about Maya's posture suggests military training. Blake Morrison claims seat 2C with the territorial enthusiasm of someone protecting an investment. His first-class upgrade cost extra, and he's determined to ensure the proper atmosphere of his premium experience. His phone rarely leaves his hand, and his 15,000 social media followers provide a ready audience for his observations about modern air travel standards. Captain Derek Hayes, 48, conducts his pre-flight briefing with the tired professionalism of someone carrying personal stress alongside professional responsibility. His recent divorce and upcoming performance evaluation weigh on his mind as he reviews weather reports and fuel calculations. 22 years of commercial flying have taught him that routine flights can become emergencies without warning. First Officer Marcus Carter, 34, brings youthful enthusiasm to the cockpit despite his fatigue from a grueling international rotation. His technical expertise with modern avionics systems complements Hayes's experience, and his ambition drives him to exceed minimum standards on every flight. Maya opens her documents revealing detailed Boeing 777 hydraulic systems analysis, technical specifications that would challenge most commercial pilots, but which she reviews with casual familiarity. Her trained eye automatically catalogs emergency exits, crew positioning, and aircraft condition indicators that other passengers ignore. The boarding process continues around conversations laden with unspoken assumptions. Blake points discreetly toward Maya while speaking to Jessica, his tone suggesting concern about standards and appropriate passengers. Jessica's responses remain professionally neutral, but her increased attention to Maya's activities betrays her growing uncertainty. Maya requests a glass of water instead of the offered champagne, a choice that Blake interprets as confirmation of his suspicions about her belonging in business class. She declines the premium nuts, opting instead to review technical specifications with the focused intensity of someone preparing for an examination. The irony builds layers thick enough to cut. Maya unconsciously checks safety demonstrations despite obvious familiarity with emergency procedures. She notices Captain Hayes' slight fatigue during his welcome announcement and tracks Jessica's movements with the awareness of someone trained to assess crew competency. As Flight 447 prepares for departure, the stage is set for a collision between prejudice and reality. Maya Johnson sits surrounded by people who question her presence, unaware that her qualifications exceed those of the crew flying them. Her father's aviator watch ticks steadily on her wrist, counting down to the moment when assumptions will meet the harsh teacher of emergency. What begins as a routine flight with uncomfortable social dynamics is about to become something far more dangerous and far more revealing about who truly belongs where when lives hang in the balance. The engines roar to life as Flight 447 begins its taxi toward the runway. Maya settles into seat 2A, opening her technical documents while other passengers adjust their seatbelts. The familiar routine of takeoff preparations provides a false sense of normalcy to what will soon become an extraordinary flight. Jessica Walsh begins her methodical service of business class passengers, her professional smile masking growing curiosity about the woman in 2A. When Maya politely requests an extra blanket during the climb to cruising altitude, Jessica's response carries an edge of reluctance. "I'll see what I can find," Jessica says, though blankets are readily available. Her tone suggests Maya should be grateful for basic courtesy rather than expecting it. Blake Morrison watches this exchange with the satisfaction of someone whose suspicions are being validated. He leans toward the aisle, ensuring his voice carries to nearby passengers. "I pay premium prices for this section. I expect a certain caliber of traveler up here." The comment hangs in the air like smoke, its implications clear to everyone within earshot. Mrs. Goldstein shifts uncomfortably in seat 1A, recognizing the ugly undertones but uncertain how to respond. Maya continues reading her Boeing 777 hydraulic systems analysis, her expression unchanged despite the obvious slight. 30 minutes into the flight, meal service begins with Jessica's practiced choreography of premium dining. She presents each business class passenger with a wine list, offering recommendations with genuine enthusiasm. When she reaches Maya's row, her demeanor shifts subtly. "We have a lovely selection today," Jessica announces to Blake before turning to Maya with notably less warmth. "I'm afraid we're out of the Bordeaux you might prefer." Maya hadn't requested any specific wine, making Jessica's assumption transparent to everyone listening. "Water is fine, thank you," Maya responds with dignity that only makes the slight more obvious. Blake accepts his premium wine with theatrical appreciation, making a point of discussing its vintage loud enough for the cabin to hear. "This is exactly what I expect in business class. Quality recognizes quality, doesn't it?" The coded language fools no one. Mrs. Goldstein catches Maya's eye and offers an apologetic smile, but Maya simply nods acknowledgement and returns to her technical reading. The documents she studies contain detailed analysis of the exact aircraft systems currently keeping them airborne, though her fellow passengers assume she's reviewing routine business materials. The humiliation escalates when Maya excuses herself to use the business class restroom. Jessica intercepts her in the aisle with theatrical concern. "Ma'am, there are facilities available in the economy section." "My seat is 2A, Maya responds evenly. "This is the appropriate restroom for my ticket class." "Of course, but we try to maintain certain standards for our premium passengers." Jessica's voice carries false regret. as if she's explaining an unfortunate but necessary policy. Blake's voice rises from his seat. Finally, someone's maintaining proper order up here. These upgrades aren't charity cases. The confrontation draws attention from surrounding passengers. Some look away uncomfortably, while others watch with the guilty fascination of witnessing injustice they're unwilling to confront. Maya stands her ground with quiet strength, her military bearing evident in her straight posture and steady gaze. I understand your concern about standards, Maya tells Jessica. I share that commitment to excellence. Her response carries layers of meaning that Jessica misses entirely. Blake pulls out his phone, discreetly photographing Maya as she returns to her seat. His social media post appears within minutes. When you pay for business class, but airlines let anyone sit anywhere. Standards matter. # first class, problems, # airline standards. The post reaches his 15,000 followers instantly, generating comments that range from supportive to outright racist. Screenshot notifications light up Blake's phone as his content gains traction, validating his sense of righteous indignation. Maya notices Blake's photography but chooses not to engage. Instead, she checks her father's aviator watch, a gesture that has become her tell for managing stress. The worn leather strap and vintage face represent decades of family military service, though Blake assumes it's costume jewelry meant to impress. The social dynamics reach their peak when Jessica makes an announcement ostensibly directed at all passengers but clearly aimed at one. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to remind everyone to remain in their designated seating areas. Business class passengers, we apologize for any disruptions to your premium experience. Blake's smirk becomes impossible to miss. About time someone addressed the situation properly. But Maya has noticed something her tormentors have missed entirely. Captain Hayes' most recent announcement carried a slight slur that suggested fatigue beyond normal operational tiredness. First Officer Carter's voice during routine updates sounds strained, and Jessica herself has grown pale despite her continued professional performance. The crew meal service occurred 45 minutes ago, and Maya's military experience with foodborne illness recognizes the timeline developing before her eyes. She's witnessed similar scenarios during overseas deployments where contaminated rations created medical emergencies at the worst possible moments. Her technical documents include recent FDA reports about airline catering safety, making her acutely aware of how quickly bacterial contamination can incapacitate flight crews. The irony isn't lost on her. While passengers question her presence in business class, she may be the only person aboard qualified to recognize an emerging crisis. Jessica stumbles slightly while serving drinks, catching herself against a seatback. When Mrs. Goldstein asks if she feels well, Jessica's response is defensive rather than reassuring. I'm perfectly fine. Just need to maintain focus on proper service standards. Blake continues his social media commentary, unaware that his posts are creating a digital record of prejudice that will soon make him infamous for entirely different reasons than he intended. His followers encourage his stance with comments about maintaining boundaries and knowing your place. Maya closes her technical documents and adjusts her father's watch. 23 years of military service, including combat missions and test pilot certification, have taught her to recognize when situations are about to deteriorate rapidly. The subtle signs are all present: crew fatigue, irregular timing, and emerging medical symptoms among staff who shared the same meal. Just a passenger, Jessica laughs to another flight attendant while glancing at Maya. Some people think they can just insert themselves into situations above their level. The words will echo through news coverage and social media for weeks to come, representing the exact moment when prejudice meets its match in expertise. Maya checks her watch again, calculating timelines and probabilities with the precision of someone trained to make life-or-death decisions under pressure. What none of them realize is that Maya Johnson's qualifications extend far beyond their assumptions, and their just a passenger is about to become their only hope for survival. 45 minutes into Flight 447's journey, Captain Hayes' voice crackles over the intercom with an announcement that sounds routine to most passengers but triggers alarms in Maya's trained awareness. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some minor technical adjustments. Please remain seated with your seatbelts securely fastened while we address these issues. Maya's head snaps up from her documents. The captain's speech patterns have shifted, slightly slower cadence, minor word slurring that suggests more than simple fatigue. Her military experience with medical emergencies during combat operations recognizes the subtle signs of an emerging crisis. Jessica Walsh grips the galley counter for support, her professional composure cracking as waves of nausea wash over her. The same meal that nourished the flight crew 45 minutes ago has become a ticking time bomb of bacterial contamination. Maya watches Jessica's deteriorating condition with growing concern that transcends their earlier conflict. "Are you feeling all right?" Maya asks, rising from her seat despite the seatbelt warning. Jessica's response carries defensive irritation. "I'm perfectly fine. Please return to your seat and mind your own business." But Maya's trained eye catches details others miss. The slight tremor in Jessica's hands, the sheen of perspiration despite the cool cabin temperature, and the way she steadies herself against surfaces while moving through the cabin. "When did you last eat? What did you have?" Maya's questions carry the systematic approach of someone conducting medical triage. "Why would you possibly care?" Jessica snaps, though her hostility lacks its earlier conviction. "Because I think you might have food poisoning," Maya says quietly. "And if you ate the same meal as the flight crew?" The implications hang in the air between them. Jessica's eyes widen as she processes what Maya is suggesting. The crew meal, the shared galley preparation, the timeline that perfectly matches her emerging symptoms. Blake Morrison intercepts Maya as she moves toward the galley area with purpose that contradicts his assumptions about her capabilities. "Where do you think you're going? Sit down and stop causing problems." Maya turns to face him, and something in her bearing has shifted. The patient tolerance she displayed during earlier humiliations has been replaced by focused authority that demands attention. "Sir, I need you to step aside." Her voice carries a commanding presence that makes Blake hesitate despite his size advantage. "Who do you think you are? Some kind of expert?" Blake's bluster can't quite mask his uncertainty about the woman standing before him. Maya reaches into her purse and withdraws a leather ID holder. Blake glimpses military insignia, pilot wings, and text that includes United States Air Force and Lieutenant Colonel before she closes it again. "Actually, yes, I am an expert." Maya's response is matter-of-fact rather than boastful. 23 years active duty, Air Force Test Pilot School graduate, 4,000 flight hours in military aircraft. Mrs. Goldstein overhears from seat 1A, her expression shifting from concerned observer to fascinated witness. "Oh my God," she whispers, loud enough for surrounding passengers to catch. Blake stammers, his carefully constructed superiority crumbling. That has to be fake. You can't just..." "I can provide additional verification if necessary," Maya says calmly. "But right now, I'm more concerned about the medical emergency developing in your flight crew." From the cockpit comes the sound that confirms Maya's worst fears. Someone retching, followed by labored breathing and confused voices. The slightly open cockpit door, a security breach that would never occur under normal circumstances, suggests the crew's condition has deteriorated beyond professional protocols. Maya approaches the cockpit and knocks firmly. "Captain Hayes? This is Lieutenant Colonel Maya Johnson, Air Force retired. Are you experiencing medical difficulties?" Captain Hayes's voice responds weakly from within. How did you... "We need medical assistance." "Sir, I believe you and your crew have food poisoning. I need to assess your condition and determine if you're capable of continuing flight operations." First Officer Carter's voice carries over the intercom, panic barely controlled. "We need medical assistance in the cockpit immediately. Is there a doctor on board?" The cabin atmosphere shifts instantly. Blake backs away from Maya, his earlier aggression replaced by uncertainty. Mrs. Goldstein looks at Maya with new respect, tinged by worry about their situation. Jessica grips a seat back for support, finally understanding that the woman she dismissed might be their salvation. "You're really a pilot?" Mrs. Goldstein asks, her voice carrying hope and disbelief in equal measure. "Ma'am, I need to focus on the emergency," Maya responds, but her tone has gentled toward the older woman who showed her kindness. Jessica stumbles, reaching out instinctively for Maya's arm as her strength fails. I'm sorry. About before, I didn't know." Maya steadies Jessica with practiced efficiency. "We'll discuss that later. Right now, I need you to help me understand the crew protocols on this aircraft. The transformation is complete. Maya Johnson is no longer the questionable passenger in Seat 2A. She has become Lieutenant Colonel Johnson, their potential lifeline in a crisis that's about to test every assumption her fellow passengers made about who belongs where when lives hang in the balance. Maya enters the cockpit to find both pilots in various stages of incapacitation. Captain Hayes slumps in his seat, sweat beading on his forehead as he struggles to focus on instrument readings that blur before his eyes. First Officer Carter grips his stomach, fighting waves of nausea that threaten to overwhelm his concentration entirely. "Captain, what's your current heading and altitude?" Maya asks, sliding into the jump seat with fluid familiarity that speaks of countless hours in similar cockpits. 270, I think. Hayes responds weakly. Can't seem to focus on the instruments properly. Maya's eyes sweep the control panel with practiced efficiency. You're off course by 12 degrees. Autopilot is compensating, but there's a significant weather system directly ahead that requires manual navigation. She points to the weather radar display showing an ominous wall of red and yellow, indicating severe turbulence and dangerous wind patterns. We need course corrections immediately, or we're flying straight into conditions that could be catastrophic with an impaired crew. First Officer Carter looks up from his struggle with illness. Are you actually qualified on 777S? I've flown larger aircraft in worse conditions, Maya responds, her hands already moving over navigation controls with the confidence of someone who understands every switch and display. But first, we need to address the cabin situation. Through the open cockpit door, she can see passengers craning their necks, whispering among themselves about the woman who just revealed military credentials. Blake Morrison stands in the aisle, his phone recording everything despite flight regulations about electronic devices during emergencies. Maya keys the intercom with steady authority. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Colonel Maya Johnson. We have a medical situation affecting our flight crew, but it is under control. I am qualified to assist with flight operations and will be working with Captain Hayes to ensure your safety. Blake's voice rises above the general murmur. This is insane! You can't just take over a commercial flight. There are regulations! Maya emerges from the cockpit, her bearing now unmistakably military. The patient tolerance she showed during earlier humiliations has been replaced by command presence that fills the cabin space. Sir, I need you seated immediately. That's not a request. Her voice carries the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Mrs. Goldstein turns to Blake with sharp disapproval. Sit down, you fool. She's trying to help us. Maya returns to the cockpit where Captain Hayes attempts to maintain control despite his deteriorating condition. Colonel Johnson, I need to understand our options. Fuel status, passenger load, weather ahead. Fuel is adequate for destination plus required reserves. 287 passengers total. The weather system extends approximately 200 miles east to west with severe turbulence reported at all altitudes. Maya rattles off the information after scanning multiple instrument displays simultaneously. Hayes stares at her with new respect despite his illness. How did you? Military training includes rapid systems assessment under emergency conditions. Maya adjusts heading controls with precise movements. I recommend immediate vector 290 to thread between storm cells using terrain-following principles. First Officer Carter, fighting another wave of nausea, manages to focus on Maya's navigation display. That's exactly what our weather radar suggests, but it's an incredibly complex approach. Maya keys the radio. Los Angeles Center, this is United 447 requesting priority handling. We have a crew medical emergency with qualified military pilots providing assistance. United 447, confirm you have a qualified pilot aboard. Air traffic control responds with professional skepticism. Affirmative Center. Lieutenant Colonel Maya Johnson, Air Force retired, test pilot qualified, current on Boeing systems through recent aerospace consulting work. There's a pause before ATC responds. Copy, 447. State nature of assistance required and pilot qualifications. Blake continues filming from the cabin, his social media followers watching live updates about what he describes as an unbelievable situation where some woman claims to be taking over our flight. His earlier posts about Maya not belonging in business class are gaining viral traction, though not in the way he intended. Jessica Walsh, despite her illness, moves through the cabin addressing passenger concerns. I need to tell you all something important. I was wrong about Colonel Johnson. I've seen her military identification and she is absolutely qualified to help us. But how do we know she's really qualified? Asks a nervous passenger. Because I've seen both our pilots, Jessica responds grimly. They can barely stand up straight. She might be our only chance. Maya demonstrates her expertise by smoothly adjusting their flight path around a massive storm cell that would have created dangerous turbulence for the impaired crew. The aircraft glides through what should have been rough air with the precision of someone who has navigated combat missions through mountain passes under enemy fire. Watch this approach, Maya tells Carter as she calculates vectors that avoid the worst weather. I'm using terrain-following navigation principles adapted for commercial aircraft. Stay below the severe wind shear while maintaining safe altitude over terrain. Chen watches in amazement as Maya's hands move over controls with practiced efficiency. How are you calculating these vectors so quickly? Experience. In Afghanistan, we had to navigate mountain passes in conditions like this, except with surface-to-air missiles added to the equation. The cabin begins to calm as passengers feel the smoother flight path Maya has established. Mrs. Goldstein observes the confident way Maya handles the crisis and addresses other passengers. Look at her. She knows exactly what she's doing. Even Blake quiets his commentary, though he continues recording. The viral nature of his posts is beginning to shift as viewers realize they're witnessing something extraordinary rather than problematic. Captain Hayes loses consciousness completely, slumping forward in his seat. Maya checks his vital signs quickly before making the announcement that changes everything. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to inform you that Captain Hayes is now unconscious. First Officer Carter is severely impaired. I am assuming flight control under Federal Aviation Emergency Authority. Gasps echo through the cabin as the reality of their situation becomes clear. Maya continues with calm professionalism. I want to be completely transparent with you. This is a serious situation. However, I am fully qualified to bring this aircraft to a safe landing. Blake stands again, uncertainty replacing his earlier aggression. How do we know you're not making this worse? Maya emerges from the cockpit one more time, meeting his gaze directly. Because, Mr. Morrison, if I were going to crash this plane, we would already be dead. The authority in her voice silences all objections. Maya Johnson has taken control not just of Flight 447, but of every assumption her fellow passengers made about who belongs where when expertise matters more than expectations. Mrs. Patricia Goldstein's voice cuts through the cabin tension. Wait, Johnson? James Johnson? Maya's hands pause over the controls. The name carries weight she wasn't prepared to confront at 35,000 feet. Your father was Colonel James Johnson? The test pilot who died in that experimental crash 15 years ago? Maya turned slowly from the cockpit. You knew my father? My husband, Samuel Goldstein, was an aerospace engineer at Edwards Air Force Base. He worked on the same program. Mrs. Goldstein's voice trembles with recognition. James saved Samuel's life during that test flight. Ejected him before... The unfinished sentence hangs in the air. Maya grips her father's aviator watch, legacy suddenly heavy on her wrist. Blake Morrison frantically searches his phone, his earlier confidence crumbling as results populate. Maya Johnson, Lieutenant Colonel. His voice falters. She's a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. The revelation hits passengers like a physical blow. The woman they questioned for sitting in business class carries the nation's highest military honor. Blake continues reading, voice growing smaller. Distinguished Flying Cross, Purple Heart, NASA astronaut candidate. Astronaut? Jessica gasps despite her illness. Selected for the program but turned it down to stay on active duty after 9/11s. Blake reads, his social media righteousness evaporating completely. Mrs. Goldstein addresses the cabin with growing emotion. Colonel, Samuel followed your career. Afghanistan rescue operations, wasn't it? You saved an entire convoy after being shot down? Maya remains focused on instruments, uncomfortable with attention. Ma'am, I need to concentrate on navigation. 47 lives saved during Operation Enduring Freedom. Blake reads from his phone. Air Force Test Pilot School graduate, youngest woman ever selected for NASA program. The irony crushes everyone present. While debating whether Maya belonged in business class, she had declined seats aboard spacecraft to serve in combat. Jessica approaches with genuine remorse. Ladies and gentlemen, I owe everyone an apology. I treated Colonel Johnson badly based on prejudice. We can discuss this after landing, Maya responds, maintaining professional priorities. No, this needs saying now. You're not just qualified, you're more qualified than our regular crew. Maya demonstrates by threading through severe weather with precision exceeding commercial standards. Combat techniques, she explains to First Officer Carter. Steeper approaches, faster deceleration, commercial manuals don't cover enemy fire. Blake deletes his social media posts with shaking hands, realizing he's documented his own ignorance for viral consumption. His followers are already turning against him as the full story spreads. Mrs. Goldstein watches Blake's panic with a mixture of sympathy and justice. I posted terrible things about her, he admits quietly. Then fix it, she responds firmly. The complete picture emerges. Maya Johnson represents the pinnacle of American military aviation, test pilot, combat veteran, Medal of Honor recipient, astronaut candidate who chose service over personal glory. Maya checks her father's watch. No longer nervous habit, but connection to legacy spanning generations of military service. From Tuskegee Airmen missions to experimental aircraft testing to Afghanistan combat operations. I got this, Dad, she whispers, words carrying decades of living up to heroic examples. New alarms suddenly pierce the cockpit. Terrain warning, pull up immediately. Their hero's ultimate test begins now. Terrain warning, pull up immediately. The automated voice pierces the cabin as Maya's trained eyes scan instrument readings that tell a terrifying story. Flight 447 is descending faster than indicated, caught in massive downdrafts that threaten to slam them into the Rocky Mountains hidden beneath storm clouds. Chen, I need you to be functional. What's our actual altitude? Maya's voice remains calm despite the crisis escalating around them. First Officer Carter fights through his illness to focus on instruments. Showing 23,000 feet, but the readings are erratic. Maya cross-references multiple systems with the rapid precision of someone who has navigated life or death situations before. We're losing altitude at twice the indicated rate. This storm system is creating downdrafts powerful enough to overwhelm our engines. She keys the radio with urgent professionalism. Los Angeles Center, United 447 declaring emergency. We have severe downdrafts and need an immediate vector to alternate airports. 447 nearest suitable airport is Denver International, bearing 045, distance 180 miles. Maya calculates rapidly while monitoring their descent rate. Negative, Center. With current fuel consumption in these conditions, we won't make Denver. The mathematics is brutal. Fighting the downdrafts requires maximum engine power, burning fuel at rates that eliminate safe margins. Maya studies terrain maps on the navigation display, seeing mountain peaks at 14,000 feet directly ahead and storm systems extending 200 miles in every direction. We can't go around it? Carter asks, understanding their impossible situation. Not with our fuel load and passenger weight. We go through it, or we attempt an emergency landing short of any suitable airport. Maya's military training has prepared her for scenarios where all options are dangerous. She keys the intercom, her voice steady despite their deteriorating situation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're encountering severe weather conditions that require immediate course adjustments. I need everyone secured in crash positions for the next 30 minutes. Mrs. Goldstein grips her armrest but speaks with confidence to nervous passengers around her. If anyone can get us through this, she can. Maya closes her eyes for 3 seconds, a combat pilot technique for mental reset under extreme stress. In Afghanistan, she flew damaged helicopters through mountain passes while under enemy fire. This storm system demands the same precision and courage, multiplied by responsibility for 287 innocent lives. Chen, I'm going to use terrain-following navigation. It's not standard for commercial aircraft, but it'll keep us below the worst winds while clearing mountain peaks. Terrain-following? Carter stares at her with a mixture of admiration and terror. That's strictly military technique. In combat, we fly low to avoid radar detection while navigating mountains. Same principles apply here. Stay below severe wind shear, follow valley contours, trust instruments over instinct. Maya begins descent toward terrain that would horrify commercial pilots. Descending to 18,000 feet. This puts us 500 feet above the highest peaks but below the severe turbulence. Passengers feel the rapid descent, several gasping as their ears pop from pressure changes. Blake Morrison, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine fear, calls out to other passengers. She knows what she's doing. Trust the expert. Through cabin windows, mountain peaks appear and disappear in storm clouds with terrifying proximity. Maya relies entirely on GPS terrain mapping and radar, flying blind through conditions that would challenge the most experienced pilots. Chen, call out our position relative to terrain every 30 seconds. Her hands move over controls with fluid precision learned through thousands of hours in military cockpits. Current position 2.3 miles north of Pikes Peak, altitude 18,200. Good. The next waypoint is the valley passage between Mount Evans and Mount Bierstadt. We thread the needle there. Multiple alarms suddenly sound. Wind shear warning, wind shear warning. Maya's response demonstrates why test pilots are selected from the most elite aviators. Full power on engines, we're caught in a massive downdraft, but I'm going to use it. Use it? Carter stares at her as if she's lost her mind. Combat technique. Dive into the downdraft to build airspeed, then pull up sharply when we hit the updraft on the other side. It's physics, and it's saved my life before. Maya deliberately dives Flight 447 deeper into the storm. Passengers scream as they experience weightlessness while the aircraft plummets toward mountain terrain. Her voice over the intercom remains impossibly calm. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're experiencing is intentional. Please remain seated. At the precise moment when disaster seems certain, Maya pulls back hard on controls. The aircraft rockets upward with G-forces that press everyone into their seats, clearing a mountain peak by less than 300 feet. Chen stares at the navigation display in amazement. How did you know that would work? Because I've done it with surface-to-air missiles chasing me. The principles of aerodynamics don't change based on what's trying to kill you. But their fuel situation has become critical. Maya, we have a serious problem. Fuel consumption is 20% higher than calculated. Maya checks gauges that tell an increasingly dangerous story. How much reserve do we have? At the current rate, 20 minutes instead of the required 45. That puts us right at emergency minimums for the LAX approach. One chance to get it right. Maya faces the nightmare scenario every pilot trains for but hopes never to encounter, attempting a difficult approach with minimal fuel while responsible for hundreds of lives. There are no second chances, no opportunities for missed approaches or holding patterns. She keys the radio with calm that belies their desperate situation. Los Angeles Center, United 447 declaring fuel emergency. We need immediate clearance, direct approach, no delays. 447, you're cleared for emergency approach. Runway 24 left. Emergency vehicles standing by. Chen, handle all radio communications. I'm focusing entirely on approach and landing. Through cockpit speakers, passengers hear air traffic control updates that increase tension. 447, winds are 15 knots, gusting to 25. The weather is at a minimum for approach. Maya looks at her father's aviator watch one final time. Dad, I need all your skills right now. She thinks of every passenger behind her. Mrs. Goldstein, who knew her father, Jessica, who learned about prejudice, even Blake, who confronted his own assumptions. Their lives depend on her ability to execute perfect approaches in impossible conditions. Maya, we're getting reports of severe wind shear on final approach. Carter reports grimly. How severe? Severe enough that air traffic control recommends aircraft hold for better conditions. Maya checks fuel gauges that show reserves dwindling toward emergency minimums. We can't hold on. We land now or we don't land at all. At 200 miles from Los Angeles, Maya lines up for an approach that will test every skill developed through 23 years of military flying. Through rain and clouds, runway lights barely visible, she begins descent toward what might be their salvation or their end. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning the final approach. I need everyone in a crash position, prepared for a hard landing. At 500 feet above ground, wind shear hits Flight 447 like a giant invisible hand, pushing the aircraft sideways toward disaster. Maya fights controls with strength built through years of handling damaged aircraft under combat conditions. "Come on, sweetheart, stay with me," she murmurs to the aircraft, using every technique learned in test pilot school and combat missions. At 200 feet, the aircraft drops suddenly as downdrafts try to slam them into the ground. Passengers scream, certain they're about to die. Maya calmly adds power and adjusts attitude with precision that transforms near disaster into controlled flight. "Not today. We're all going home." Maya executes a touchdown that saves 287 lives despite conditions that would challenge the most experienced commercial pilots. Flight 447 rolls out safely on the LAX runway as emergency vehicles race alongside. Spontaneous applause erupts throughout the cabin. Passengers cry with relief, amazement, and gratitude toward the woman they had dismissed hours earlier. Maya slumps in the pilot seat, emotionally and physically drained but victorious. "That was the most incredible flying I've ever witnessed," Carter tells her with genuine awe. Maya checks her father's watch one last time. "Just doing the job, Carter." But she knows the truth. She just executed one of the most difficult emergency landings in commercial aviation history, saving every life aboard through skill, courage, and the kind of heroism that defines legends. Emergency vehicles surround Flight 447 on the LAX tarmac, their flashing lights reflecting off wet asphalt as paramedics rush aboard. Captain Hayes and First Officer Carter are stabilized and transported to medical facilities, their conditions serious but no longer life-threatening thanks to Maya's swift action. Maya gathers her belongings quietly, preparing to slip away as she has done countless times after military missions. Heroes don't need fanfare. They just need to know the job is complete. "Colonel Johnson, wait." Mrs. Goldstein's voice stops her at the aircraft door. Maya turns to find the elderly woman approaching with tears streaming down her cheeks. "My husband would have been so proud to see what you accomplished today. James Johnson's daughter saving lives just like he did." "Ma'am, I was just doing what needed to be done," Maya responds, genuinely moved but uncomfortable with praise. "No, dear, you did what only you could do. There's a difference." Jessica Walsh approaches despite her lingering illness, determination overriding her physical discomfort. "Colonel, I need to apologize for my behavior. I treated you terribly based on assumptions and prejudice that have no place in my profession or my life." Maya's response reflects the grace that defined her throughout the crisis. "Jessica, we all make mistakes under pressure, but your mistakes don't save 287 lives. Mine could have cost them." Jessica's voice carries genuine remorse and newfound respect. Blake Morrison approaches last, clearly struggling to find words adequate for his transformation from antagonist to grateful survivor. "I don't know how to apologize for what I said, what I posted online about you." Maya meets his gaze with compassion that transcends their earlier conflict. "Mr. Morrison, fear makes people say things they don't mean. What matters is learning from the experience. But you weren't afraid, even when you had every right to be." "I was terrified," Maya admits honestly, "but I had a responsibility to fulfill." First Officer Carter, being wheeled to an ambulance, stops the paramedics. "Colonel Johnson, thank you for saving our lives and teaching me what real flying looks like." Maya nods acknowledgement. "Get well, Carter. You're a good pilot who just needs more experience." As Maya heads toward the terminal, she checks her father's aviator watch one final time. The crisis has ended, but she knows the real story is just beginning. Airport officials and airline executives pursue her for debriefing, but Maya Johnson disappears into the crowd, another passenger among thousands, carrying the quiet satisfaction of duty fulfilled. Within hours, Blake Morrison's deleted social media posts resurface through screenshots and cached versions, creating a viral sensation that spreads across every major platform. The contrast between his initial prejudice and Maya's heroism generates millions of views, comments, and shares. Twitter explodes with hashtags, #Seat2A, #JustAPassenger, #MayaJohnsonHero. The story trends globally as news outlets pick up the incredible narrative of prejudice meeting heroism at 35,000 feet. CNN leads their evening broadcast. Tonight, the remarkable story of Lieutenant Colonel Maya Johnson, the decorated military pilot who saved 287 lives after being dismissed by fellow passengers who thought she didn't belong in business class. Blake faces immediate professional consequences as his employer views the viral footage. His supervisor's phone call is brief and brutal. "Morrison, your behavior on that flight contradicts every value our company represents. You're suspended pending investigation." His social media followers, witnessing the complete story, turn against him with savage efficiency. Comments flood his accounts. "You filmed a hero and called her unworthy. She saved your life while you humiliated her. This is what racism looks like." Blake posts a public apology. "I was completely wrong about Maya Johnson. She's a genuine American hero, and I treated her shamefully. I'm deeply ashamed and committed to learning from this experience." United Airlines launches an internal investigation into Jessica Walsh's conduct, but she uses the opportunity for genuine growth. Her statement to the press carries authentic remorse. "I allowed unconscious bias to influence my professional conduct. I'm working with United's diversity training programs to ensure this never happens again." The airline implements new anti-discrimination policies and mandatory bias training for all crew members, using the Flight 447 incident as a case study in how prejudice can blind people to expertise. Maya initially avoids media attention, but the story becomes too significant to ignore. A persistent reporter catches her outside her modest apartment. "Colonel Johnson, how does it feel to be called a national hero?" "I was doing my job," Maya responds with characteristic modesty. "Any qualified pilot would have done the same." "But you weren't supposed to be working that day." Maya pauses, considering her words carefully. "No one's supposed to be working when emergencies happen. That's what causes emergencies." The Air Force releases Maya's complete service record with her permission, revealing details that stagger even military aviation experts. 47 combat missions, 12 emergency landings under enemy fire, Congressional Medal of Honor for a rescue operation that saved an entire platoon, the youngest woman ever selected for NASA's astronaut program. A retired Air Force general provides context. Colonel Johnson represents the absolute finest traditions of military service. Her actions aboard Flight 447 exemplify the training, character, and dedication we instill in our pilots. Mrs. Goldstein establishes the James and Maya Johnson Scholarship Fund at the Air Force Academy, ensuring her father's legacy and Maya's heroism inspire future generations of aviators. Passengers organize a reunion 6 months later, with many meeting Maya for the first time as themselves, rather than through the lens of crisis. Their testimonials create powerful social media content. "She didn't just save our lives, she taught us not to judge people by appearances." Maya Johnson proved that heroes often sit right next to us. The Flight 447 incident became required reading in aviation schools and diversity training programs nationwide. An instructor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University tells students, "The Johnson incident demonstrates that expertise comes in all forms. Never assume you know who might save your life." Maya's story spreads internationally, inspiring conversations about prejudice, assumptions, and hidden heroism. Documentary filmmakers approach her about telling her complete story, though she remains focused on the simple truth that guided her actions throughout the crisis. 6 months after Flight 447, Maya Johnson agrees to one comprehensive interview that will define how her story is remembered. Sitting in her modest living room, she holds her father's aviator watch, the timepiece that witnessed Tuskegee Airmen missions, experimental test flights, and now commercial aviation heroism. "My father taught me that character isn't revealed in how we treat important people," Maya says, her voice carrying the wisdom of someone who has lived through extraordinary circumstances. "Character is revealed in how we treat people we think are unimportant." The interviewer presses for deeper meaning. "What should people learn from your experience?" Maya's response cuts to the heart of human dignity. "Every day we encounter people whose stories we don't know. The person serving your coffee might be a veteran. The woman in the wrong seat might be the person who saves your life. Respect isn't earned through status, it's owed through humanity." She issues a direct challenge to viewers. "I ask everyone watching this, look around you. Really see the people you encounter daily. Respect their dignity not because of what they might do for you, but because they deserve it as human beings. Maya holds up her father's watch, its worn face reflecting decades of service. This watch has seen combat zones, test flights, and emergency landings, but its most important function has always been reminding me that time is precious, and so is every person we share it with. The documentary narrator delivers the final message. Maya Johnson's story reminds us that heroes don't announce themselves with fanfare. They sit quietly in seat 2A, enduring insults and prejudice, waiting for moments when their service matters most. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below about times when you misjudged someone or when someone surprised you with unexpected capability. Subscribe for more stories that challenge assumptions and celebrate hidden heroes. If you believe respect and dignity should be universal rights rather than privileges based on appearance or assumptions, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. The final scene shows Maya boarding another flight, greeted warmly by crew members who recognize her. She settles into seat 2A again, some traditions worth keeping, and checks her father's watch as engines power up for takeoff. Sometimes the most extraordinary people hide in the most ordinary moments, the narrator concludes. Keep your eyes open. You never know when you'll meet a hero. The end screen displays, subscribe for incredible true stories, and share your hidden hero stories in comments below. Maya Johnson proved that heroism isn't about seeking recognition. It's about being prepared to serve when moments demand everything you have to give.
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.